little sausage tube has something you may not have seen before. It has a fluid applied flashing. Now, we've all set windows with peel and sticks and rolls of this and that, but you may not have set a window with this. On the build show today, we're going to show you the full install, start to finish, on this window behind me at a Catalyst built job here in Kansas City. And we're going to show you the full fluid applied install. This happens to be PROSOCO's R-Guard system. Today's build show, how to set a window with fluid applied. Let's get going. Okay, so here's the product. PROSOCO's the manufacturer. This is the R-Guard system you're gonna see on this house. And this actual product in this 20-ounce sausage tube is Fast Flash gun grade. And here's the two smart gentlemen that you're about to see install this window. First off, Joe Cook and Travis Brungart. These two make up Catalyst Construction. Did I say that right?
Absolutely right.
In Kansas City,
that's right.
Missouri.
We're in Kansas. Missouri right now, but we're based in Kansas. It's a state line thing. Don't worry about it.
Okay, anyways. So guys, prep. Talk me through what we did, Travis. I see this red product, which actually is this.
That's right.
On your rough opening, and I see this orange product. What are these two products?
So what you're seeing with the red product is the gun grade Fast Flash.
Yep.
And that is actually the second step in our install.
Okay.
If you look in the corners there, you can see a pink product
that
we use first. That's the joint and seam filler from
Okay.
PROSOCO. And that is a little bit more fibrous. It has a little higher body, like a toothpaste. You can lay that out, and it will fill larger gaps up to 3/4.
Gotcha.
So we use that at the bottom corners.
So where your wood's coming together in the corner, you did that first.
Yep.
And then you put the Fast Flash, which is this on, which is the red material.
Right, and the way that we do that is we utilize the sausage gun.
Yep. Which, by the way, we really like these because the waste factor is tiny. When this is done, there's no big cartridge to throw in the dumpster. There's just this tiny little piece. And so you can pierce it a couple different ways. Sometimes I just like to use a nail and poke it once or twice. But what he's doing is loading up a sausage gun, which the commercial guys use all the time. A little less common to us residential builders. And then the other thing I want to talk about briefly is the orange stuff you're seeing on here is the Cat 5 material, also from the R-Guard system. When it's all done, this kind of has this kind of rubbery bed liner type feeling to the product. Maybe not quite that thick, but you're going to see this entire house has been coated orange from the foundation to the ridge. And this window, we could frankly just set the red to the edges of the window flange and then come back and do this later if we wanted to. In this case, we did it first.
That's right.
With that being said, what's our first step?
So as always, we're thinking about water. And so we've already done to 4 inches into the window so that we can have continuity of air control after the fact, because we'll come back with air dam on the inside of the window and do the little backer rod around the window after the fact. But we've got to have continuity, so that's why the Fast Flash goes in further.
Yep, and it also goes in at the sill, the jambs, and the head.
Exactly. But now, since we've already got, Joe already placed shims in our mole location and our edges, the supporting locations for the window, we're really ready to start applying this at our sides and head.
All right.
We do not apply it across the bottom because if any water does get into the system, we want to leave an easy path out.
All right, let's do it.
All
Go
right.
for it, Travis. So what he's doing is he knows the nailing flange. We're about to install an Interlux window on this project. He knows the width of that nailing flange is what, roughly 1 1/4-ish?
That's right.
And so he's running this. But honestly, if he goes a little outside, no big deal, because you're going to see later, and in fact, you can see it on this window right next door, this is the same product we're going to use on top of the flange. You know, you think about a window install traditionally with some type of house wrap, there's a peel and stick. We're eliminating all that by using the same family of products. And really the only difference between orange, red, and pink is kind of the viscosity of the product. It's a slightly different amount of thin or thick, depending on the use case, but it's all the same technology. If you don't know this product, the genesis of this, kind of the chemical genesis of it, so to speak, it was developed, the technology for this, in the 1970s by the automotive industry in Japan, who was looking for a better way to glue windshields onto cars. And you think about a windshield that's getting glued onto a car, what's it need to do? It needs to stick to glass, it needs to stick to paint, it needs to stick to metal. And oh, by the way, on our windshields, we can't let any air or water in or you're gonna have a really unhappy buyer for that brand new Toyota, right? So that's the same chemical that we're talking about here. It's an STPE product, and it's both air and watertight. The other property that's interesting about this is that it's vapor open. There's actually an ability for vapor to dry through this. I don't know the exact number, I'll have to look it up, but it's around 20-ish perms. So we have some ability to dry through it. Okay, we're set up. We got that upside down horseshoe. Time to grab the window.
Let's do it.
All right. Okay, be careful, boys. That's a heavy window.
You go up first, and then I'll come up.
And I'll be the stabilizer. How about that?
Okay. All right, we're going bottom in first, and I'm set.
Yep. Okay, so that bottom's in.
You good, Joe?
And again, there's nothing on the flange down here at the bottom.
Correct.
And we're going to see a little bit of squeeze out on the back side. You can see it right there. And now we got a couple of...
I can hold it if you want to get in the middle there, Travis.
Okay, I'll stay in the middle. Matt, you can talk about what Joe's going to go do inside. I'll hold the window, and that way you can tell camera.
Joe is going to, we want to make sure this window is both level and plumb. This happens to be a fixed window, so we're a little less concerned about action. And this video is not intended to be a window install video in terms of how to plumb it, how to shim it. I'm really talking more about specifically the fluid applied weather barrier here, which is the PROSOCO system. But in general, we would put a screw or a nail in one of the bottom corners so that the window's tacked. I think that's actually what he's about to do. Then we'll shim the window to make sure it's level, and then we'll double check it's plumb, and then we'll screw it off on the flange all the way around. Quick sidebar here, we're using screws on the window flange, which is an improved product, but anytime we choose a screw, we're gonna choose a washer head or a wafer head, depending on what you call it. Bigger, fatter head, so that when Travis screws that on, it's not gonna blow through the nailing flange. You could also use roofing nails with a bigger head, which typically like screws better.
So Matt, we've screwed off every other hole in the installation flange, and we're really ready to go ahead and apply the fast flash over the flange to get our continuity. But I can't ask too much of that product to span. So if I have a little deformation because the wall behind me isn't dead flat, I need to tack that back.
Yep.
Just so that I can get the proper performance and not ask too much of that product to span too far.
Yeah, I like that. As a side note, this is an Interlux window, fiberglass window, vinyl flange. I like how they printed on there outside. I've seen windows installed backwards before. It's really embarrassing for all involved, mainly the builder.
Yeah.
So good job doing that. I also really like these corner pads that are put on there ahead of time, and they appear to be all sealanted in nicely. Now that that window is in place, the next step is to go back with that same red product, that's Fast Flash, and you're gonna see Travis is gonna run a bead down the flange and onto the sheathing here, which by the way, the sheathing was bare OSB, and in the field here where there's not a seam, let's say, it's just that Cat 5 product. When you get to a seam like you see here, there is another joint and seam behind that, and that's why you're seeing this difference in kind of texture there. But you can see as he's putting that flange on, he's just kind of rolling it like a snake over and above. And the more times you do it, the better you get in terms of judging how much product you need. I think it's easy to go under the first time you've done it, or maybe over and put too much product on. We're still on the original tube that we started with too, so we're still at tube number 1 on this project. I guess that's not true. He might have used a good portion of the first tube when he did the rough opening. And why don't you go ahead and strike that side down while you're still over there, if that's okay.
Of course.
So what he's using here is what I always call a Bondo scraper. Of course, you can get them labeled with PROSOCO Fast Flash, but this you can buy anywhere, including the Amazons. Flexible scraper. You can see it's tapered, so it comes to a point, but it's not sharp. It's not metal, right? It's a plastic scraper. And Travis is going to give you his expert hand there. And you're going to see all he's doing is making sure he's got a nice continuous bead with no gaps. And we're not worried about taping off that. Like if you see a finished window, you can see it's not perfect as it goes outside the flange. It doesn't need to be. If you really wanted to be some kind of crazy perfectionist, you could tape around it to get that perfect kind of tape-looking joint. And it looks like he's got maybe an area he needs to put a little bit more material. That's normal. Don't worry about it. You do want to do it, however, while it's still uncured, if possible, because then it'll. I guess that's not totally true. It could be after the fact.
Yeah,
frankly,
come back and layer it
you
on.
come after the fact. This will stick to the R-Guard, to another R-Guard product from that same family. One thing to note that's kind of interesting about this product, it's a moisture cure product, meaning if it had rained this morning, we just wipe off the puddles and we're not worried about there being some moisture on the wood, about some residual moisture anywhere, because that actually helps cure the material. That also means, though, if you're doing this in the desert, like in an Arizona climate, you might actually want to mist, let's say, your OSB down first, or that joint there if it was a super dry, a super low humidity day, because it's pulling the humidity, the moisture out of the air to cure the product. The hotter and more humid it is, the quicker it's going to dry on you in the field. I don't know what the dry time is this. Do you have any sense, Travis?
I mean, it obviously varies by moisture content of the air, but we have found that in about 15 minutes, it's generally tacked up at this level of thickness.
Yeah, and then overnight the next day, you're totally fine touching it. But an hour later, you might still get some product on your hand.
It's possible.
If you were to push on it. And you're noticing that Travis is doing, again, both sides, but not the bottom. We're going to leave that bottom flange open. And go check out Travis's other videos to get the full scoop on the entire house. He used this PROSOCO R-Guard system from foundation to ridge. This happens to be a SIPS construction house. But this product, one of the beauties of it is it'll stick to concrete. So we could detail between the concrete foundation and the wood framing. It'll stick to the vinyl flange on this window. It'll stick to metal. He's got a couple of Simpson straps. In fact, there's one right behind me here that's totally encased and coated in this. It'll stick to multiple materials. You always, as a builder, I always want to test that and verify that, but this is a product that sticks to a lot of things. I suspect it would not stick to silicone though, so be cautious about using that and going over it. But other than that, it really sticks to a lot of materials. Now I am seeing a little bit of a gap on your flange there, so you got to come back and get a little bit more material.
Let's go heavy.
In one or two spaces. But you can see it's really easy to work. It's not too different, frankly, than frosting a cake in some respects.
I have way more hours in this application than in cake frosting, but I'm going to trust you.
I think you missed your career, Travis. You should have gone into the baking world.
Pastry chef, here I come.
Will you drop a little dab in those two nail holes for me, too?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right there. One other random side note, this doesn't necessarily have to do with this flashing system, but look at that overhang. Above Travis's head, he could probably pop his head on it. He's got, it looks like a 2-foot overhang, which actually overhangs the head of the window. I think the overhang comes lower maybe than the head by an inch or so. We're not going to put a head flashing on this window. It would be worthless. It would be a waste of money. On the back of the house, though, where he's got 2-story or 3 stories, that's where we need to be a little more cautious about not being close to an overhang. But if you got a window like this that's right underneath an overhang, you could potentially omit a head flashing. You need just a little bit more on this one. You can see it's
really?
shadow line.
I'm on the wrong side of the window. I can't see what you can see.
Yeah, there you go. And drop it in those nail holes right there too, will you?
Absolutely.
Thanks, sir.
This is why project management's so important. Good oversight makes for good installs.
Yep. Kind of a side note on Enerlux, one thing I like about them is this flange that's on the bottom has been put into a kerf, and then there's a bead of sealant on the outside and a bead of sealant on the inside. It's kind of a belt and suspenders approach. I like that about the guys in Enerlux. They've got a good belt and suspenders approach to their window manufacturing, which fits in my philosophy nicely. Okay, so as Travis finishes this up, the next step is going to be to go to the inside, because we need to connect that window to the rough opening from both an air and a water continuity perspective. So let's cut to the inside and we'll show you the last step in the process. Okay, so this is not the window that Travis just installed, but it was super bright over there. We thought we'd come to a window that we can light up a little better. The process is the same. So first off, we're not gonna do this. This is often used. It does an okay job, but in my experience, it doesn't actually stop all the air that could come through, especially at that bottom that we left open. And if we did get some amount of water that came through the window itself, I'd be worried it would get through this. So we're not gonna do this on this project. Instead, we're gonna use this product. This is called Air Dam. So again, PROSOCO is the manufacturer. Our guard is the system that we like here. And Air Dam is this final step. What Travis is gonna do is he's gonna now take the continuity between the window and the red and pink that you see here, which we put on earlier, that made a good water and air barrier for the framing. And now this Air Dam is gonna connect it. I like that name. It kind of gives a flavor for what it's doing. It's stopping air with a back dam on the back of this window. Now, if we had a bigger gap than this, we'd want to put a backer rod in here, but this is a pretty tight gap. And my main sausage caulking gun guy right here, Travis, is going to show you the process. It's really straightforward. We're basically just back caulking the window. There's only so much to talk about here. It's really pretty straightforward. The big key though is if you have a bigger gap, you want to backer rod it. And I would say actually this joint that he's doing here is on the verge of needing a backer rod.
Yeah, I could use a 1/4 inch there.
You could use a smaller backer rod, but that's okay. And we're not filling the gap, right? What we're trying to do anytime we run a bead of any type of caulking is we want it to touch on two sides, but not the back side of the joint. So if you picture a U shape, we want that caulking to touch both sides of the top of the U, but not go the full depth. So all he's doing is connecting the window frame to the PROSOCO joint and seam or Fast Flash, the red material that's on there.
And you are getting a little bit of residual. I just used this same sausage gun to apply the Fast Flash outside. This Air Dam product is typically all white.
Yep.
And I've got a little bit of a red candy stripe in there, almost as if I was...
Yeah, just reuse the tip, basically. No big deal. That's not hurting anything. So all Travis is gonna do basically here is run around the whole length of the window. Travis, great job, dude. I think it'd be worth us mentioning that you did not strike down that joint.
Right.
You certainly could have. You could have put a rubber glove on, struck that joint down if you wanted to. You don't need to though. You've got trim on here.
Yeah, we're gonna have jam extensions that come in. They're gonna completely hide all that. So I would rather not risk smearing sealant on my window or, more importantly, degrading that air seal. I wanna leave the solids where they need to be.
And it was a tight joint. Had we had a wider joint with a backer rod, the fluid applied guys who do this all the time, I actually have a set of them back in my toolbox, make these spatulas in different sizes. They basically just look like fingers in different widths. And so we could get the correct finger for the width to strike down that joint. And that would make sure the sealant is touching the window frame and the jamb, and on the backside, the backer rod, but not going the full depth of the cavity. So
that would produce that ideal hourglass sealant shape where you've got contact both sides and it can elongate.
Exactly.
We're not gonna have a lot of structural movement at our window.
Yep.
I think that's less critical in this application, but you're absolutely right, that's best practice.
Yeah, for sure. And guys, if you don't know Travis, he's shooting videos on a weekly basis on this job site, including a whole series on this particular house. Yeah. I'll put a link in the description to thebuildshow.com where you can see Travis's videos. But basically, if you go over there, hit the hamburger menu and hit experts, and then you can get to Travis's content. I'll also put a link in the description to our newsletter sign up so that twice a week you get an email from our team saying, here's what Travis has new, here's what Matt has new, here's what Jake or Steve or Brent or Lydia or any of our other contributors has new on the site this week. It's a great way to keep up with the team and what we're publishing new on the site. With that being said, guys, hit that subscribe button below. We've got new content every Tuesday and every Friday. Follow us on Instagram or Facebook. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on The Build Show.